Hello and welcome to today's presentation. We're going to be talking about welcoming visitors to your website and really looking at your website to be sure that it's ready for company. For today's presentation, I'm going to be your host. My name is Lorraine Ball and I own a digital agency called Roundpeg. We help business owners build websites that make prospective customers feel welcome. Okay, let's get started. We know that people don't set out to build websites that are going to turn off prospects and customers, but all too often prospective visitors come to websites and they're disappointed and they leave. And so the question that you have to really ask yourself is, are you ready for company? Is your website set up to welcome visitors, to give them the information that they need, and to help them take the next step? To figure that out, we're going to show you how you can audit your website, how you can look at your design to make sure that you've got a great first impression, how you can evaluate your content to be sure that you're sending the right messages, and give you ways to look at your lead generation tools to make sure that you're doing everything you can to drive traffic to your website and convert visitors into prospects. So let's get started. Let's take a look at design. The very first thing you have to think about when you're looking at a website in today's environment is mobile responsiveness. In the old days, it was easy. Everybody had a little desktop computer, and that was how they experienced your website. But today, you can't control what device someone is going to use to look at your website. Are they looking at it on a giant monitor, a laptop, or an iPhone? And your website has to respond to each and every one of these devices. We know that 56% of traffic to almost every website comes from mobile devices. And so it is really critical that you are paying very close attention to mobile responsiveness. And we actually are now building websites mobile first. We're kind of looking at how does something look on mobile and then working backwards because it's that important. Now, a lot of people, let's say 2 or 3 generations back, were building what I would call mobile adaptive websites. And on a mobile adaptive website, what you did was you took your whole website and you basically sent instructions so that if somebody would look at it on a mobile device, you would just shrink everything down. And so everything just got a little bit smaller. Well, the problem is that when everything gets down to this size, nobody can actually read anything. This is an example of a website that is mobile adaptive. It's adjusting to the different displays, but it's not really readable in those smaller formats. What you need and what your website has to be is mobile responsive. And on a mobile responsive website, what happens is your display actually changes. If you look at our website on a giant monitor, you're going to see 2 columns. But if you look at it from your telephone, the 2 columns change, and 1 column goes on top of the other. The other thing that disappears is this cute little RP. It's great, it looks wonderful on the screen, but on a mobile device, it would just push content down unnecessarily. And so as you're thinking about your mobile presentation, you really want to think about what's the most important information. What do visitors need when they come to my website on their mobile device? And what's getting in the way? Vertical hierarchy is really important, and it's really difficult because in a way I'm asking you to pick a favorite child. There may be 3 or 4 different things that you want to present, 3 or 4 different pieces of information, and the problem is that that's too much. In a mobile world, one of those things is going to go on top of the other, and if you don't pick what comes first, your website will do it for you. So you really need to think about, if somebody comes to my website, what's the first thing they need? What do I want them to do? I love Union 50 for so many reasons. It's one of my favorite restaurants. They make fabulous old fashions that my husband loves, but also what I like about them is they don't mess around. You come to their website and the very first thing you see is reservations. That's because that's what they want people to do. Whether you're coming to their website on a mobile device or a desktop, when you arrive, the very first thing they want you to be invited to do is make a reservation. There's no question, there's no confusion, it's right there. Beyond that first call to action, you really want to think about the structure. You want to have a simplified page. You want to have clear, logical steps. You want to have a simple menu and great search functions. And I'm going to talk about that simple menu for a moment. Back in the day, when people first started designing websites, they created those kind of file cabinet sort of websites where you would hit a drop-down menu and it was like pulling open a drawer and there was stuff underneath it and stuff underneath it. That's not how people search websites anymore. And honestly, that wasn't really very good structure back then, because nobody really understood why something was way down 3 levels deep. So what has really replaced those very deep menus are great search functionality. If your website is constructed correctly, today, I just type in what I'm looking for and let your website do the work of delivering the right information. But let's take a look at a before and after example of cluttered versus uncluttered pages. This was a client. They came to us a few years ago and asked us to help them update this website. There was a lot of information on the home page, but the problem was that there was too much information, that people didn't know where to go. They didn't know what to look at first. And there was a lot of information down here that really belonged on an interior page. It wasn't mobile responsive, and quite honestly, it just didn't work. These guys are a heating and air conditioning and plumbing company, and really, when it comes right down to it, what they want people to do when they come to their website and what people are looking for is an opportunity to schedule an appointment. And so that's what we did. We cleaned up the web page. A lot of this information is now in some of the interior pages, but we made it really easy for people coming to the website to do what they came for. You want to schedule an appointment? Fill out just this little form. It will send us a note and we'll get back in touch. You want to leave us a review? We want you to do that. Or pay your bill, or here in the middle, learn a little bit more about savings. If you're not happy doing it online and this isn't what you're looking for, give us a call. And then down at the bottom, schedule a newsletter, and there's actually a little bit more information below. But the bottom line is that what we did as we moved from the website on the left to the website on the right was we really transformed the home page into kind of a directional sign that points people where they need to go, that helps them figure out what they're supposed to do next. And it's structured in a way to answer their most common questions quickly. In every business, there are first actions. For the restaurant, it was make reservations. Maybe it's schedule an appointment, answer frequently asked questions. Maybe in your industry, people aren't going to jump right to the sale. They're not going to come and be ready to talk to you right away. Maybe that request to quote is a little bit too presumptive. There are lots of interim steps you can take instead. You can offer people an opportunity to watch a video, read a case study, go to your blog. Those first actions can look like any of these. This is a heating and air conditioning company, and again, for them, contact us is an important first step. This is a flooring company, and while they would love people to schedule appointments, sometimes people aren't ready to jump right to schedule. And so what they do is browse our gallery, and I'll show you later some of the interior pages, how we offer them the opportunity once they start browsing to make an appointment, make an appointment, make an appointment. But if we jump to that right away, sometimes it's a little too much and people are like, whoa, not ready for that. Here's another alternative, and in this instance, we are giving them an opportunity to book online. 3 different approaches. All of these businesses are really scheduling kind of businesses, but very different approaches. The first one is pick up the telephone and call us. The second one is browse and find a few things you like and then make an appointment. The third one is, we don't even really need to talk to you. Here's our calendar, just schedule an appointment and come in. The point is that in order to decide what your first action is, you really have to know your business. You really have to think about what is the first step that your customer is likely to take. So what do you want? Here are a couple of more examples. These are some locksmiths. I thought this was a really cool example because here, what they have is they have a nice little drop-down menu on their home page. And so you can actually pick the service you want, and then when you hit Get Started, it takes you to the right page with the right information. Here, these guys know that their customers are most likely to want to have a phone conversation. And so instead of having any other button, they actually put the phone number right there. And you can't tell from my PowerPoint presentation, but that button, if you are on a mobile device and you click it, it will dial the phone. So the website is designed to connect customers directly to this company. All right, let's move off of design and let's talk about the words and the content that you choose. Common content mistakes that I think really turn off prospective customers. The first is something I call you-centered content. I know it's your website. You think it's about you, but it really isn't. It's about your customers. It's about helping them figure out that they're in the right place, that they have a problem, and you can solve it. So how do you know if you have you-centered content? Go to your About page or your service description page and print it out. And sit down with a red pen and a blue pen and read the information. And every time you have a first-person word, I want you to circle it in red. I, we, our process, our service team, our expertise. Circle that in red. And every time you have a second-person reference, you, people like you, companies like you, your problem, circle it in blue. And when you're done, look at the colors on the page. Is there more red than blue? You've got some rewriting ahead. Another mistake is to be too technical. And even on engineering and medical and pharmaceutical websites, you need to dial it back. You need to be really careful about the jargon. You need to make the language human. Yes, you need the keywords that both your readers and search engines are looking for, but particularly if you're in a very technical industry, work towards shorter sentences, more paragraph breaks, headers and subheads to make it easy for everyone to consume your information. A couple of other things to avoid, the 3 S's, stale, shallow, or sloppy content. It is so easy with most web design platforms today to go in and update a page every now and then, to change a little bit of the content, to add new information, to swap out a picture. And search engines appreciate that, and so do visitors. If it feels like the website hasn't been updated in a year, you're not going to impress anyone. Shallow content, your home page should be pretty light, but your interior pages, particularly the pages that talk about your products and your services, should have a minimum of 500 words. In sloppy content, if you're not good at proofreading your own work, and I'll tell you, I'm not, make sure you have someone else do it for you. Nothing turns off those nitpicky, detail-oriented types like a typo in your headline. And there's no reason that you should lose a chance to sell to a prospective customer because you left off a comma. When we think about the idea of words mattering, I thought this was a good example of 4 different businesses that are in essentially the same market, but have made very different choices about their headlines. The 4 websites we're going to look at are 4 of my competitors who all do web design. But this first one, as you read it, freelance WordPress development, he talks about PSD to WordPress. The language is very technical, and quite honestly, the average customer or the average business owner looking for a website might be a little turned off. But he's okay with that because he's not looking to sell his services to the average business owner. What he wants to do is sell his services to somebody like me. He wants other web design companies to hire him. And so all of his messaging on his homepage are not about the benefits of web design or even the benefits of WordPress. He assumes if someone has come to his website, they already know that, and they're looking for someone who can make it happen. In contrast, this is a company that is trying to sell web design services to business owners. And the headline says, "Level up your website." Now, I know what they were trying to communicate. I know they were trying to convey this idea that you should raise the quality of your website. But their words are a little strange. I don't know any business owner who's laying in bed at night thinking, gosh, I wish I could level up my website. And so the problem is that this particular headline speaks to the story that the web design company wants to tell, but not necessarily to their customer. This one I think is better. Grow your revenue with inbound marketing and sales the smart way. Well, you've hit a lot of things I'm interested in. You're totally talking to me about what I want as a business owner. I didn't wake up in the morning and say, God, I really want a new website. I woke up in the morning and I said, you know what? I want to grow my business and maybe a new website is what I need. And so when I get here, you've presented me with a value proposition, a chance to grow my revenue and sales with inbound marketing the smart way. The thing that I object to with this, or the place where I think they could have done better, the words smart way are what they chose to put in bold. What's really important to their customers is revenue and sales. So I would have bolded those 2 words instead. And this, I think these guys do an awesome job. This is a great call to action. It's very specific. These guys build e-commerce websites. And so what's their headline? What are they offering? They're offering to increase your sales and profitability. And then there's a button here that tells you that you can learn how we can help. But what you see when you come to this website is increase your sales and profitability. So right there on the front, they are showing you exactly what you get if you work with them. This exercise will work in any industry. Look at your website and look at 3 of your competitors, or look at 3 companies that do what you do in 3 different markets. Either way, you will end up with ideas of what works and what doesn't as you're building your new tagline. I mentioned earlier that Google likes or does not like shallow content. They really want deep, rich content. And I get pushback sometimes from business owners who say, but nobody will read all of that. That's okay. Search engines will. And so what I often recommend that companies do is they think of their web page sometimes in two pieces. This is that same flooring company, and here is the beginning of their flooring gallery. There's that nice little contact form. Hey, if you want to chat, let's do it. And if you click any of these pictures, they'll open up and you can see the room scenes in much more detail. And then at the bottom, there's an offer for this hardwood flooring guide. Really, this is the bottom of the page. But there's not enough text, and this is an important page. We use it as a landing page for our advertising, our Google AdWords campaigns. And so Google says, well, that's an interesting page, but there's not enough information there. And so what we did is underneath the page break, we provide additional information about hardwood flooring. This is where you get the other 400 words that this page needs. 90% of the visitors that come to this page will never read this information. But search engines consider this a high authority page, and it will rank well, and it will be less expensive to run ads to drive traffic to this page. And as you're thinking about your content, and as you're thinking about keywords, and you're thinking about having good information on the pages, don't forget the pictures. 63% of Google image search actually results in clicks to website. People search on Google, they see images that are relevant, and they click. And 27% of all search is image search. People are actually searching a keyword and then switching over to look at the pictures. So what comes up when somebody searches in your category? Have you ever done this kind of a search in your industry? I typed in locksmith Indianapolis to see what came up. If I'm running a locksmith company, I want to know, are my pictures there? And do my pictures look as good as the other things that are showing up? In this category, there's a lot of room for improvement. Okay, we've talked about design, we've talked about putting good information on the page. Now let's talk a little bit about driving traffic to your website, getting people to show up so you can show them your great content. Step number 1, start with the data. Figure out how much traffic you're getting on your website now. Google Analytics are free. The information available to look at the performance of your website year over year is there as long as your web development firm has installed the Google tracking code. There are tons and tons of numbers that you can look at, and you can bore down into the data and spend hours there. But if you've never really looked at the numbers, I would start here. Start with the overview. Compare this month versus the same month last year, or look at a 6-month period or a 1-year period. And what you're looking for is the traffic better this year than last year? We're seeing a website that is performing just slightly better than it did a year ago. There was a little bit of a ripple here. It looks like second week of March, where last year or the year before was actually a little bit better. But for the most part, what you're looking for is year-over-year traffic improvements. And you really need to look month by month in almost every business. You can't, it's really hard in most industries to compare April of this year to May of this year, because most of us are in seasonal businesses. Interest in your product or service goes up in certain months and down in others. And so you really want to look at, how did I do against this period a year ago? You also want to make sure that you remember to track things like special events that cause traffic to spike or crash. Maybe your website was down for a day, or maybe you had a really big promotion, or there was some external event. What you want to be sure is that you log the history of that, so a year later when you come back and you see these weird dips or bumps up, you can account for that. General rule of thumb, you want to see more green than red. I don't pay a lot of attention to the new versus returning visitors. The data isn't really actionable for most businesses unless you're doing advertising and retargeting. So I would kind of skip that, and I would focus on, are more people coming? Are they looking at more pages? And are they spending more time once they get here? The other thing that I think is really important is to switch over and look at your acquisition charts, because this tells you how people are finding your website. Are they finding it through organic search, going to Google and typing in a word that brings them to you? Are they finding it through direct? Direct traffic is someone who knows your company and goes to the internet looking not just for a plumber, but Joe's Plumbing. Social is exactly what it says, traffic that comes from social media. Referral traffic is traffic that comes to your website from another website. So it might be, if you're a member of the Chamber of Commerce and you have a link on the Chamber website, it's going to come through referral traffic. Email traffic is not traffic that comes from a personal email, but if you're using email marketing like Constant Contact or MailChimp, there's tracking code in that software, and that's what this email refers to, and then you've got other. And so I look at several things. I look at how much traffic came, but I also look at the behavior. And what I see is that people who come from referrals and emails actually have a pretty low bounce rate. They're more likely to stay. The longest time on the site actually comes from organic. And if I had advertising set up, I could have tracking codes here as well. But if I want to make improvements in any or all of these, there are very specific actions. If you want to increase your direct traffic, if you want more people going to the internet looking for you, there is nothing that you can do online to make that happen. You have to get out into the real world. Maybe you advertise, maybe you go to networking events, maybe you hand out business cards. But direct traffic happens when people get to know you in person and then go to the internet looking for you. If you want to improve your organic traffic, You need to have a steady stream of new content, and you need to optimize your information. And we'll talk just briefly about SEO. But you need to pay attention to your keywords. You need to have unique page titles. You need to make your website more attractive to search engines. Referral traffic, go out and make friends. Connect to other businesses and do cross-promotional links. Don't just throw your link on any crappy website that will have it. Google is really looking for quality links. And so, if you're a member of an association, get in their online directory. If you're working with another organization, put a link on their website to yours and your website to theirs. If you want more email traffic, you have to grow your email list. And when all else fails, think about paid advertising. We do not typically recommend that companies jump immediately to paid advertising, but we do think there is an opportunity there to fill in the gaps and maybe boost awareness of a company for a limited period of time. I mentioned optimization. Search engine optimization is the activity of making your website more attractive, optimizing it for search engines, organizing the information so that it is easy for search engines to index and categorize who you are and what you do and drive traffic when people search. Let's talk about some SEO basics. Right now, there are 3.5 billion, that is billion with a B, searches every single day. Every single day. And in order to handle that, Google has to be very smart. And they have gotten smarter all the time. They are very aware when people are trying to game the system, and quite honestly, they won't put up with it. And they are big enough to set the rules. 90% of all searches still come through them. And the other thing that you have to realize is that Google is an advertising platform. Why do they care about your content? Because what they really want to do is sell ads. And your content that comes up in search helps them, because if people use the Google search engine and find good information, sometimes they'll click on the ads. But if every time they use the Google search engine and it takes them to crappy websites, sooner or later they're going to switch and go to Yahoo or Bing or Dogpile or some other search engine. That's exactly what happened to About.com and Ask Jeeves. If you're old enough, you remember those search engines, and you may have wondered what happened to them. Well, what happened was they didn't monitor content. They started serving up crappy information, and people fled to Google. Gaming the system does not work. You might drive traffic for a limited period of time, but you won't drive sales. And finally, SEO is a marathon. You can't optimize your website today and expect that that's going to be the only time you ever have to do it. It requires continuous effort, because any day that you're not optimizing your website, one of your competitors is. In order to be effective in SEO, you really have to think like your customers. You have to think about the keywords and phrases that they're most likely to be using when they look for a company like yours. You can use the Google AdWords tool to actually search for phrases. You can type in a word. You can type in where you want to search, whether you want to search nationally or regionally. They will do several things. One, you'll get a list of alternative phrases. You'll also see how many searches are occurring every month for that particular word and what it would cost if you wanted to bid on it. And this is important because the more expensive the phrase, the more competition, the harder it's going to be number one for that particular word or phrase. So if you want to compete for a particular word or phrase, your content has to be relevant. Once you look at that list and you decide you're going to try to compete for a particular word or phrase, you want to use the keywords in your page titles and in your headings and subheads and scattered through the text. You also, if you want to get a little geeky, want to use it in your meta descriptions and in the unique URL for every page. Google is smart, and so you don't actually have to treat them like a 3-year-old with a limited vocabulary. You can use synonyms. Synonyms make the content more interesting to human beings and actually more interesting to search engines. So if I'm a locksmith, I might say car lock in one paragraph and automobile lock in another. I'm talking about the same thing. Human beings will recognize it's the same thing, but it varies the content. It makes it feel a little bit less repetitive. I might talk about office security systems or key card security systems or locking systems. And again, by varying the words but keeping them in that same family, I strengthen my relevance without becoming redundant. You want to pick a battle you can win. And so you really need to ask yourself the question, do I deserve to be first? If there are 150 companies in my market that all do exactly what I do, or there are 50 companies, or there are 25 companies, why do I deserve to be first? And so you need to take a look at who you're competing with. Do this search. See who comes up. And sometimes there is a big dog in your market and you just can't win. And so narrow your topic. Instead of trying to win for the term locksmith, go after commercial locksmith. Or narrow your geography. Instead of doing Dallas locksmith, because the Dallas Metroplex is a pretty big area, go after Plano, which is a suburb, and try to win on Plano locksmith. Be creative and monitor your results. And there is real power in local search. Even if you are trying to participate nationally, at least having certain pages on your website that are tied to specific locations will help. Why? For most of us, we are running local businesses, and 75% of people use their phone to get real-time location-based information. If there isn't good geographic information on your website, if there isn't an address, if there isn't content that points to the fact that you serve customers in Indianapolis, Carmel, Zionsville, and Plano, Plainfield, you may miss an opportunity to show up when someone is looking for you. 90% of mobile searches lead to action. And so this is important on 2 points. Number one, if somebody is on their telephone, they're not browsing. They're browsing from their computer. They're ready to take action from their phone and drive to your place of business or call you. And so as you're thinking about what your website looks like on mobile, remember this. And finally, 70% of search via mobile actually results in an action being taken within 1 hour. And so you want to monitor your local search position. You want to do the searches for companies. Again, locksmith near me, companies in this zip code. You want to look at who shows up. These guys are advertising. You want to see, are you in the map? And then you want to see which companies get listed right below the map. Look at who's getting listed. Figure out what they're doing that helps improve their search position. One of the things that you can do, especially when you're trying to win on local is to standardize your citations. This is going to sound really silly, but these two addresses are not the same. As a human being, I'm looking at this, I'm reading this, 210 East Main Street, and I read this and it says 210 East Main Street. But this one is Main Street, this is Main ST. This one has the P.O. box, this one doesn't. These are important. Everywhere your address appears, it needs to be identical. It needs to be identical on every page on your website. It needs to be identical everywhere it appears online, whether it's on an Angie's List listing, on a directory for your Chamber of Commerce. Everywhere you go. So take some time, standardize, and then start cutting and pasting so everywhere you appear, you look identical. And then you want to be able to convert visitors to prospects. You want to be able to capture leads. And to do that, you need to think about the fact that every page on your website is a landing page, and you need to be making an offer, and an appropriate offer, everywhere you go. So here's my flooring company. They're running a special, and here's the offer, and then make an appointment. On their gallery, you can look at pictures, and here's the invitation to make an appointment. When you dive in and you're looking at just the floors, there's the mini contact form. And down here, if you're just trying to learn more about floors, and before you buy, you can download their free flooring guide. And finally, if you really dive in and look at a particular floor and you learn about it, you have an opportunity to add to your favorites. In order to do this, you have to give us your email to set up an account and then fill out a form to schedule an appointment. I can't guarantee which pages on the website a visitor will come to. I can't guarantee that they won't come directly to this particular page. And so I have to be sure that every page has an invitation to take the conversation one step further. Logical next steps. This is a longer list of the list I showed you earlier. But honestly, any of these things can make sense depending on what your business is about and what the next step is for you. Maybe it's getting someone to leave a review or download a research paper or complete an assessment. People love quizzes. If your industry lends itself to quizzes, go for it. But if you're going to do that, remember that on anything where you're trying to collect information, ask for less. Here's some contact form tips. The more you ask for, the less you're going to get. So if you need all this information, great. But if you don't, if you can get away with just your name and email, this will have a significantly higher number of people who fill it out than this. If you're really trying to screen people and you don't want to waste your time on a lot of people who are not interested, then go for the longer form. If you are going to add these elements to your form, just keep in mind you're going to lose people with every field. 5% dip if you ask for a phone number. 4% if you ask for a street address, 2% if you ask for city and state. That's almost 10%, well, that's actually 11% fewer people if you ask for all that information. And just kind of an interesting side note, if you drive 100 people to your website, you're lucky if you get 11 or 12% to fill out the contact form. So you can't risk losing them by asking for information you don't need. When you're designing your form, remember that design matters. You want to create your contact forms left align, single column, large font, clear questions, and smart error handling. And you want to think about action statements for the buttons, either commanding statements, benefit statements, or even avoid the loss. But keep your action statements to 1 to 3 words, and don't be afraid to go all caps and yell a little bit. The real key to a contact form is the button. So you want it to be in a contrasting color to the rest of the form. About 1/3 of the width of the form, always, 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 all caps. People are like, oh, but it feels like I'm yelling. That's okay. This is the one place on your website you want to yell a little bit. And if you can set it up with a little subtle movement so when it rolls over it moves a little, that will help you. And don't be afraid to go big. See the difference between that button and that one? And finally, I gave you some examples of different words that you could use. Submit is not one of them. As you can see, any of these phrases gets significantly higher interaction than the phrase submit. Okay, as you're putting these pieces together, I want you to dream big. I want you to look at other websites in your industry, see what different people are doing, and see if there are features that you like. My guess is there's not going to be one perfect website out there, but there'll be different ones that have different elements that you like. And then go beyond your industry. Go in other fields. Look at what other kinds of businesses are doing and how they're presenting their information and attracting people. And then create your wish list and get ready for company. If you've enjoyed today's presentation, be sure to check out the rest of our webinars at roundpeg.biz.